I Love Lucy was a trailblazing sitcom that completely changed the world of television. For 4 laugh-packed years out of its 6-year run, it was the #1 most-watched show in America. From 1951 to 57, the uproarious Lucille Ball and her equally clever husband Desi Arnaz kept the laughs coming just as fast as those chocolates did on the conveyor belt in the iconic job-switching episode in 1952, which to this day is considered one of the funniest TV show episodes of all time. Lucy was the naive, bungling, yet endearing goofball of the duo, while Ricky was her charming, grounded, perpetually vexed, yet ever-loving foil. Despite I Love Lucy's saccharine sheen and affable laugh track, not everything was fun and games. Below the surface of the groundbreaking comedy lie dark secrets and painful truths pertaining to the rocky relationships, scandalous stories, and troubled actors that haunted the cast and crew members to this day. Sure, it seemed as if I Love Lucy was from a simpler time, one where you wouldn't see a lot of controversies, but behind the scenes of the beloved comedy is a reality that stands in contrast with what viewers at home saw on their TV. This video will reveal the surprisingly dark truth behind the scenes of I Love Lucy. There's a lot of stuff here. For example, you're not going to believe who the main sponsor was for this family-friendly show. It's going to blow your mind. We'll get to that in a minute, but first let's touch on the touchy issue of race relations in America during the 50s. Lucy's marriage to Desi was controversial. This was the 1950s, a time in American history where racially mixed marriages were frowned upon, to say the least. Desi Arnaz was already a popular musician before he joined the show's cast, but he had struggled to fight off attacks about his ethnic background as being Cuban American since day one. Lucille Ball had already made a name for herself on the hit radio show My Favorite Husband in 1953, and when CBS extended the offer for her to star in the TV adaptation of the program, she agreed to only take part in it if her husband Desi could be a part of the show as well. CBS wouldn't agree to her terms, citing Desi's accent and Cuban heritage as being disqualifying factors. They thought the 1950s audience wouldn't be into seeing a man of his race on their TV screens married to a white woman. Ball and Arnaz set out to prove them wrong. The two embarked on a tour taking their comedy routine to clubs across the country with an overwhelmingly positive response. CBS was so impressed by the duo's success, they went ahead and greenlit their show. Lucille almost died doing the grape stomping scene. In what's now remembered as one of the most notorious episodes of I Love Lucy, Lucy's Italian movie, Ball steps into a trough of grapes and starts stomping away alongside some local Italian ladies. Producer Jess Oppenheimer later revealed the entire scene was improvised. While shooting the scene, Lucille Ball, being the firecracker she was, got into a fight with one of the ladies. Teresa Torelli D'Arnico, who was a popular opera performer in her day, got grape juice inside of her nose while filming the scene and was furious, to put it lightly. During their fight, Teresa attempted to drown Lucille in the vat. Can you imagine if she had succeeded? Vivian Vance hated William Frawley with a fiery, burning passion. Who would have thought Fred and Ethel actually despised each other? Frawley, who played Fred Mertz, would regularly poke fun at Vivian, who played his on-screen wife Ethel Mertz. What started off as playful prodding, however, quickly began to escalate. Vance reportedly once called Frawley an old poop, and that set him right off. He responded by calling her an old fat-ass bitch. Their relationship never recovered from that incident. Whereas at one time it was rumored the two would star in their own spin-off series after I Love Lucy, Vance put the kibosh on that idea, citing her unwillingness to work with Frawley any longer than they already had. To be fair, their relationship might not have been quite as strained as the media reported it to be. Some sources close to I Love Lucy define their relationship as more of a love-hate kind of dynamic. Lucille's pregnancy sent network brass into a frenzy. Ball got pregnant towards the end of I Love Lucy's Season 1. It sure looked like the show was destined for the chopping block because pregnancy was a taboo subject for a show at the time. Even so, Oppenheimer wasn't going to let that stop them from keeping the show on the air. It was time to break new ground. So, despite the fact that Lucy and Ricky slept in separate beds, they were going to continue on with one little catch. They were still forbidden from saying the word pregnant on air. The show's primary sponsor, Philip Morris, the tobacco company, still weren't thrilled with the notion that Ball's pregnancy would be incorporated into the show. So CBS called in a Catholic priest, a rabbi, and a Protestant minister to help supervise the screenwriting process for the episode that made the big announcement. After a lot of back and forth and several rewrites, Lucie is enceinte, French for pregnant, aired on November 24, 1952. The show frequently featured cigarettes as product placement. Remember how Philip Morris was the show's prime sponsor? That was because they struggled to get other advertisers to back the program. When the tobacco company finally signed on to endorse the series, they insisted cigarettes be featured in as many scenes as possible, presenting an image that smoking was a luxurious component of living the good life. To top that off, Lucille and Desi made a dozen or so commercials for the tobacco corporation. But instead of taking a smoke break, why not give this video a like and subscribe to our channel? And don't go just yet. You're going to be shocked to learn what Desi Arnaz was doing behind Lucille Ball's back that absolutely infuriated her to no end. CBS almost didn't sign William Frawley. The actor who played Fred Mertz had a pretty unbecoming reputation in the industry of being a sloppy drunk. The network had feared he would be less than reliable, but Lucille, Desi, and Oppenheimer vouched for him, pointing out he had never missed a day of work in his life, and he hadn't even shown up a minute late in his entire career. In truth, he wasn't Ball or Arnaz's first pick in the first place. They initially hoped Bea Benaderet and Gail Gordon from My Favorite Husband would play Fred and Ethel, but their schedules didn't line up with production demands. They also considered James Gleason, but he was far too expensive for their budget. Only Lucie was allowed to joke around about Ricky's accent. His accent certainly was the subject of jest from time to time, but it was a subject completely off limits to anyone but Lucille Ball. The cast and crew would all have a laugh and good spirit now and then about the way Desi would pronounce certain words, and he'd always take it in stride. But Oppenheimer wanted to make it clear the only person who could make jokes about his manner of speech when the cameras were rolling was his on-screen wife. Test audiences agreed. Anyone else making jokes about his accent wasn't well received by viewers. Desi Arnaz wore platform shoes to look taller. There's no shame in being a bit on the shorter side, but Desi could hardly be considered as such, seeing he was 5'9". Comparatively, Lucille was 5'7". This still wasn't enough for Desi, who billed himself as 5'11", so he wore lifts and shoes that could make him stand 4 inches taller than Lucille. Desi Jr., Arnaz's son, attributes his insecurity about his height to Cuban conceptualizations of masculinity. Lucille Ball was afraid to forget her lines. Being too rigid and focused on getting your lines absolutely perfect can make delivering a comedic performance difficult. A clear example of this is in the episode Lucie Does a Commercial, where Lucie becomes a spokeswoman for Vitamita Vegemin, a health supplement that's comprised of 23% alcohol. Throughout the episode, she becomes increasingly intoxicated and her speech becomes increasingly slurred. Although the episode is oftentimes cited as being one of her funniest, Ball hated doing it because she had to memorize a bunch of slurred, scattered, and incomprehensible words. An improv comedian she was not, so pulling the charade off took a lot of hard work. I Love Lucie invented the idea of reruns. After Lucille Ball gave birth to little Desi Jr., she had to take some time off to recover. Philip Morris insisted the show be aired weekly, so the network had to come up with something to appease their contractual obligations. I Love Lucie was filmed on 35mm film at a time when lower quality 16mm film was the standard. Lucille and Desi actually had to take a cut in pay because of the higher quality film that was used for production, but it was worth it in the end. Since higher quality celluloid was used, it meant the show could be aired with greater longevity without as much loss. When the reruns aired, there wasn't a precedent for the practice, but Desi and Lucille still managed to make a cool $5 million off the deal. Desi Arnaz frequented prostitutes. Scotty Bowers, a notorious Tinseltown pimp, alleged that Arnaz was a regular customer of his. He supposedly would order up to 4 girls at a time and would tip them better than anyone else would. Once Lucille learned of this, however, she was furious. One time at a Hollywood party, she walked up to Bowers and slapped him across the face and ordered him to stop pimping out girls for her husband. Despite the outburst, Bowers held no ill feelings for Ball and was quoted as saying nobody dared mess around with Ball because her temper was equal to her charm. Well, that's enough scandal and gossip for today. It's crazy to think there was so much hidden in the shadows of I Love Lucy that just now, after all these years, is finally starting to get some attention. You'd never suspect Lucy was almost murdered on the set of her own show, or that Desi was out running around with sex workers behind his wife's back. But after all, that's the kind of thing you can come to expect from Hollywood stars and starlets. Anyway, who was your favorite character in I Love Lucy? Are you a Desi Arnaz fan, or do you think Lucille Ball stole the show? Let us know what you think in the comments section. And don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Tap that little bell icon to turn on notifications so you can stay up to date with all of our latest content.